Today on GarageGuruTV, we'll take a look at and install a pedal box from Tilton Engineering, and then I'll show you how to plumb a brake system. Hey, this is DJ Martin and welcome to GarageGuruTV. One of the most important parts in building a vehicle is getting the braking system right. A mushy pedal or any inconsistencies with the system can turn a great project into an absolute nightmare. But don't worry, with the right techniques, products, and tools, anybody can build a braking system in their home garage. Today, I'm going to walk you through some of those techniques, the tools you'll need, and the products you'll need to build a braking system, starting with this Tilton 600 series pedal assembly. Since 1980, Tilton has been the leader in high-performance, motorsports-grade pedal assemblies for the automotive aftermarket. On TiltonRacing.com, you will find that their product lines now include racing clutches, bell housings, throwout bearings, as well as their new ST246 twin-disc street clutch kits for all of the popular modern muscle cars. Tilton offers 3 different tiers of pedal assemblies, the 600, 800, and 900 series. The adjustability, features, and materials all improve with the series number, but even the entry 600 series that we chose is a fantastic choice for a full-blown race car. Tilton also offers a line of high-performance gear reduction mini starters for everything from work trucks to Le Mans prototypes. Tilton is generous enough to provide 3D models of many of their products on their websites, so if you are designing your car in CAD software, this makes selecting and designing around Tilton's quality components much easier. For our 1930 all-wheel drive Model A, we chose the 600 series 2-pedal underfoot assembly in the brake throttle configuration as our car uses a 4R100 automatic transmission. The 600 series pedal assemblies are designed to work with Tilton's 76 series master cylinders. If you are unsure of which master cylinder bore sizes will work for your vehicle, Tilton has a form you can fill out where you give them details on your vehicle, and with their decades of expertise, will advise you on the bore sizes for your application. Once you have all the tools and the components needed to assemble your Tilton 600 series underfoot pedal assembly, the first thing you're going to want to make sure of is that the balance bar is installed appropriately from the factory. What Tilton wants to make sure of is that the clevises that mount the 2 master cylinders are precisely 2.5 inches apart. We already checked this prior to this video, so we're all good there. You just want to check these 2 points. Once that is all firm, then you can go ahead and start assembling it. So we have our 2 master cylinders here, and we're going to install these onto the pedal assembly. This is our 13/16, which will be going to the front brakes. So you slide it over the studs, and while you're sliding it over, you're going to want to grab the threaded rod that comes out of the master cylinder and thread it into the balance bar assembly. Try to keep count of how many turns you've threaded it into the assembly so you can balance the brakes easier later. This is our 1-inch master cylinder that is for the rear brakes. It helps to thread it into the balance bar assembly first and then slide it over these studs. Now we'll slide both of the master cylinders over their studs. Due to the fact that it's a balance bar, they're going to try to push off of one another, so you're just going to have to kind of wiggle and fight it on there. There you need to grab 5/16 24 bolts. We have nuts, excuse me. We have lock nuts for this application, so I'm not going to tighten them all the way down since this is not the final assembly of the pedals. Slide the other master cylinder on and put on your 5/16 24 nuts. And make sure you torque these to spec as per Tilton's instructions. Every Tilton pedal assembly comes with extremely detailed, full-color instructions with drawings, diagrams, and all of the information needed to install these systems into any vehicle. These instructions are also available on their website. As mentioned before, one of the great qualities of the Tilton pedal assemblies is their adjustability, and that definitely comes into play when you're mounting your pedal pads. So this is a bracket, part number 72180, that allows you to mount the pedal pads onto the forged aluminum arms. And you use the provided hardware. Slide the bracket in between the two arms, and you can move this bracket up and down quite a ways to get it exactly where you'd like it in your car. I'm setting it right in the middle of the travel for now. Once we get it into the car, I'll go ahead and sit in it and see where it feels the most comfortable. Put the 2 socket head cap screws in. Tilton supplies all the hardware and the lock nuts for this, so that's why I'm not tightening all these up. I don't want to use up all the lock nuts. Then you're going to grab your pedal pad. This is the skinny pedal pad, part number 726035. And you mount these with 2 socket head cap screws or button head screws that go into the bracket you've just mounted. And once again, there's adjustability here where the pad can go up or down. So you grab an 1/8 inch Allen key. I'm going to set it in the higher of the 2 positions right now. And once you're about to install this into your vehicle, Tilton supplies a piece of grip tape that's cut to fit the pedal pad nicely so you have a nice solid grip on the pedals. We're not going to go ahead and do that yet because this isn't the final assembly. Go ahead and repeat the same process that you just saw on the gas pedal for the brake pedal. The brake pedal has a larger pad, so make sure you use the small pad for the gas pedal, large pad for the brake pedal. The model number on the brake pad is 726034. That's for the wide pedal pad for the brakes. Tilton's 76 series master cylinders provide you with a lot of options for plumbing. In particular, they allow you 2 different outlet ports. For if you want to use a banjo bolt, you use this top port. And if you want to use just a union 3AN fitting, use the back port. In order to plug one of the ports, they do supply the master cylinder with a plug. For our application, we're going to use a 3AN union fitting on the back. So we're going to have to move our plug to the top port. Thread that in. You could also mount a brake pressure switch for your brake lights in the top port. So we're going to go ahead and thread in our 3AN union fitting into the back. And this goes out to our brakes. The inlet, which comes from your reservoirs, has a plug in it from the factory and uses a 4AN union coupling. In Tilton's instructions, they like to see a crush washer on this 4AN union fitting as well. A crush washer is just an aluminum washer that helps seal. I'm not tightening these all the way down since this is not the final assembly of this pedal assembly. That is how you plumb the Tilton master cylinders for AN line. The reservoir would come off of this 4AN line. Here's an example of what one of Tilton's offerings for brake fluid reservoirs. This is part number 74230. And this also has a 4AN fitting as well, so all you need is a 4AN to 4AN hose going in between those 2. The outlet side on the master cylinders use 3AN. There are many adapters so that you can adapt this 3AN fitting to a common 3/8-24 brake fitting or any other brake fitting for your vehicle, as well as metric fittings. As some of you may know, this pedal box is going onto our 1930 all-wheel drive Model A project vehicle. The throttle body on our 2-valve 5.4 mod motor is a cable-driven throttle body, not drive-by-wire. We opted for Tilton's 72-793 throttle cable linkage system. If you have a drive-by-wire vehicle, you'll need 72-794, which converts this for use with drive-by-wire throttle bodies. So what we have to do first is take the end of this tie rod with this bolt and thread it into one of the 2 lower holes on the gas pedal arm. By picking the top hole, you'll get a different pedal ratio than you would with the bottom hole, which therefore would affect the cable travel. After that is attached, then you're going to grab the 2 supplied bolts, nuts, and 2 washers. And you're going to attach this to the body of the pedal assembly. There's 2 holes in the side of the frame. Then attach the washer and the nut on the back side. As with all Tilton products, there's a lot of adjustability, and you can mount the throttle cable bracket assembly in many different ways to give you different pedal ratios, and therefore it'll change how much you push the gas to get a certain amount of throttle. We have Tilton's clevis for use with this throttle cable, and we adapted it onto a low-car throttle cable. You just slide the clevis over one of the two holes, again, adjustability right there, and slide through the pin, and then there's a retaining clip that goes on the other side. Here's a demonstration of the operation of the pedals. There's extra movement in the assembly because we are mocking the assembly up in the chassis. The last thing you'll need to pick up from Tilton is a brake fluid reservoir. This is their part number 74230. You'll either need 2 of these if you just have an automatic, or 3 of these if you have a clutch. But you might be wondering, how do you mount this to your vehicle? And I came up with a nifty solution for that. I'm big into CAD and 3D printing, so I went ahead and designed this bracket that holds 2 of Tilton's part numbers 74230. I 3D printed this on my Creality CR10S Pro printer in PLA, and went ahead and scuffed it up, kind of bodyworked it, and sprayed it with some spray paint, and it looks great. Has an integrated fill line, Tilton's logo, as well as front and rear. It shows which side is the front and the rear. If any of our viewers are 3D printing savvy or have access to a 3D printer, go ahead and send us a message on Instagram, and I'll send you the STL file so you can 3D print this part at home. In front of me are the essential tools you will need to plumb a braking system. The first thing you'll need is commonly called a brake line flaring kit. It'll feature a flaring tool, the flaring bar, as well as oftentimes a cutter. This cutter is a lot better than using any other cutting method because it doesn't mar the lineup as much. 99% of the time you'll be dealing with what they call an SAE 45-degree double flare. All that mumbo jumbo means is that it's a certain way how they flare the tube for the fittings to fit right. 99% of vehicles you see on the road will use this type of flare, and anytime you go and rent one of these from your local auto parts stores, that's the one they're going to give you. If you're the oddball like us and you're starting to use AN lines in your brake plumbing, then you're going to need a different type of flaring tool, so just keep that in mind. So once you've flared and cut your tube, you're also going to need to bend your tube. This is a bender that bends all the way up to 180 degrees and bends a couple different diameters of line. These are very readily available at auto parts stores and online. If you're using AN lines in your plumbing, you're also going to want a set of AN wrenches. This is an adjustable set that we got online for about 20 bucks. They're not that crazy expensive, but the good thing about these is they're aluminum, so they don't mar up your nice anodized aluminum fittings on your AN line. One more tool that we found extremely helpful when we were building the brake system on our all-wheel drive Model A is what's called the original thread checker. What this is a bunch of female and male threads on just a piece of steel line, and they're all labeled what thread type they are. So everything from metric M12 all the way to tiny imperial ones. This will help you verify that all of your fittings are what you think they are. And don't take for granted that you know any of the fittings on your vehicle. Our vehicle is based off of an Expedition, and for some reason the front are 3/8 24 and 7/16 20, and the rears are metric. It makes no sense, but it's just one thing you're going to want to make sure of when buying all the parts for your vehicle. Once you have all the tools set up for plumbing your brake system, now you're going to need all the hard bits. You're going to need all the hoses, the lines, and the fittings. The great part about plumbing a brake system is there's millions of different types of fittings, hoses, and lines so that you know and could rest assured that you're going to find the right parts. The worst part about buying all these things is there's millions of parts. So it's kind of hard sometimes, and it's kind of hard to navigate the vast market of all these things. But I'll try to simplify it down. 99% of the time what you're going to use is 3/16 hard brake line. There's a couple of different flavors per se that you could have. You could either use mild steel, which is common in a lot of vehicles. It can rust over time, but it's worked fine on many vehicles before. You can go the more expensive but good looking route of stainless steel, but that is a little harder to bend and flare. But it also has the cost. A good middle ground is NiCop. It's a mixture of nickel and copper. This stuff's really easy to bend, it's reasonably priced, it doesn't corrode like mild steel does, and it's a lot easier to bend and flare than mild steel. So consider picking up a roll, they come in rolls like this, of NiCop brake line in 3/16. That's what most everything is. For us, we have to connect a couple AN fittings, and we didn't want to go ahead and purchase the AN flaring tool. But what you can do is go online, and there's lots of pre-made stainless steel braided brake hoses that you can find on Amazon or other places like that. So instead of having to buy another flaring tool, you just buy the hoses. We have a 4AN here that goes from our reservoir to our Tilton Masters. And then we have a 3AN here that goes from our Tilton master cylinders to our handbrake master cylinders. More on those later. After you have all your lines and hoses, you're going to need all your fittings. This is arguably the hardest part, but it kind of comes down into three camps. You have your normal kind of 3/8, 7/16 kind of ones. You have metric fittings, and then you have your AN fittings. If you're running a Tilton master cylinder or other motorsport style master cylinder, it may be beneficial to adapt from AN to kind of the standard 3/8 24 or metric fitting so that you can use the stock plumbing in your vehicle. For that, you'll want an adapter like this. One side is 3AN, so that goes into your Tilton or other motorsports master cylinder, and the other side is just the very common fittings that you could pick up at your local auto parts stores. There's many different fittings. There's 90s, there's 180s, there's T's so that you can split off into your two wheels, and there's a bunch of different fittings you could get into. The best thing to do is pick up, like I said before, one of those thread checkers and make sure you have everything right. The other thing to check for is, and what we got caught off guard on one of these, is we ordered some metric fittings for the back of the vehicle, and the threads weren't long enough. The tube wouldn't bottom out, and the line wouldn't bottom out in the T. So make sure you have the right length of thread as well, because that's very important. Now let's get on to showing how we can cut, flare, and bend the tubing. So for our Model A project vehicle, we needed a little 90-degree hard line on our braking system. A good way to figure out what length and bends you need on your braking system is to actually use either music wire or a wire hanger to kind of lay out all the lines. So once you know the length you need, you're going to grab your cutters and you're going to unscrew them and they open up. Slide it over your brake line and you'll feel it click in. The way these work is you bring them down just so they're snug, and once they're snug, you spin it around a couple times. Then you tighten it some more and spin it around a couple times. It just kind of keeps biting slowly into the tubing. These cutters don't mar the tubing up so much though. That's why these are so good. And finally, it's cut. It takes a little while, but trust me, it's worth it in the end. So once you have the piece you need, you're going to grab another tool. This is a tool I forgot to mention earlier. It's a little deburring tool with a point that you put into the end and just turn to the right, and it takes out all the burrs from where you just cut. This is critical so you don't get any metal in your braking system. We're going to go ahead and do this on both sides. Now we're going to go ahead and put the 90-degree bend on it. This is the bender we have earlier. We're going to bring it over to the 0-degree mark right there. You just slide your tube in, and it kind of lines in those grooves. Clamp it down, and this stuff is extremely easy to bend. 1, 2, 3. And we have a 90. You just line up that little line with the 90. And ta-da, you have a 90. Now let's go ahead and put that 3/8 24 inverted flare nut on there. Before you flare the line, make sure you slide on your fittings. Once it is bent or flared on both sides, you will not be able to get these fittings on there. Ask me how I know this. This is a really common mistake people make, but just remember to do that. So after this, you're going to grab the bar that comes in your brake line flaring toolkit, and it'll be marked each of the line sizes anywhere from 3/16 to half. Obviously, we're on 3/16. We're going to go ahead and just loosen this guy up. You're then going to slide the line in up from the bottom and get it clamped down. You'd usually want to do this in a vise. It makes it a lot easier. You could put this end in the vise. And then start tightening it down. Don't tighten it down all the way though, because you have to set a certain amount of offset. This is effectively the die for the 3/16 tube that will come in the kit. Again, there's dies from 3/16 all the way to a half. And what you want to do is level it with the shoulder on here. It's not an exact science. You'll have to do a couple flares to see what tends to work best. Go ahead and clamp it down. There's serrations inside these holes that hold it in place, but still you're going to want to crank these down pretty hard because the tube can slide back down into the tool. Then you're going to grab the die that we had earlier to measure the height. It has a little pin on one end, and you're going to slide that into the tube or the line. And then you're going to grab this. It kind of looks like a pitman arm puller kind of, but it has a point on the end that's going to drive the die into the line. So I have to loosen this up and slide it over the entire tool. Put the little die in. Let's go over, slide this over the top. It may help to have some WD-40 on hand to aid it in the flaring. Then you just go ahead, try to keep it as straight as possible. It's kind of hard to do this out of a vise. And then once it starts grabbing, just make sure everything is going down straight, you're not crooked at an angle, and just start tightening it up. And after a point, you'll start feeling it start hitting the tool. And you don't want to go much farther than that because you don't want to break the tool. Right there, I'm starting to feel it kind of grab into the tool. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen it up. Then we're going to take the die out. And then you have to take the pointed end and put it into the flare you just made. And you're going to tighten that down the same way you just did the last one. Once it starts to grab, make sure you're straight and not crooked, and start tightening it down again. Once again, once you start feeling it grab into the tool, you know you're good. And there you have a 45-degree SAE double flare that will thread into anything. Here's an example. You can thread it into the 3AN to 3/824 adapter. One last thing you may need to think of when plumbing your brake system is how you're going to activate your brake lights or send a signal to your transmission for the brakes. For vehicles that are using a Tilton assembly, you don't have your typical brake pedal switch that actuates when you push the pedal. Instead, you could pick up one of these. This is a brake pressure switch. This switch is activated off of the hydraulic pressure of your braking system. These usually go in line with your braking system. They're supplied with a T that has typical, in this case, 3/824 threads on either side, and then the pressure switch uses pipe threads. So make sure you use Teflon tape on those when you finally install those. Then you just put your wires up there and send it to your brake lights or your ECU, and you have a brake pressure switch to turn on your brake lights. Right now we're going to install our brake fluid reservoirs onto our frame. This is a little 3D printed bracket that I talked about earlier. I fabbed up a bracket that mounts to the frame, not to the body, so that if we ever have to remove the body off of our all-wheel drive Model A, the brakes are still functional. You don't have to remove anything from the braking system. Just go ahead and put it on there. It mounts with some 5/16 bolts. This is typically where you would have your master cylinder and your reservoirs, but since our master cylinders are mounted on the actual pedal assembly, we're just going to have our reservoirs up here. Now we're ready to install the Tilton pedal assembly into our vehicle. It's really important to make sure that the bracket that you mount your pedal assembly to is extremely strong. The Tilton 600 series underfoot pedal assembly, as well as some of their other pedal assemblies, use 5/16 bolts to mount. There's a bolt pattern on the bottom of the frame, and you can actually look up the dimensions for this online on their website, so you could possibly have a bracket CNC cut for you. We just did it by hand. So now I'm going to go ahead and install this into the vehicle.
Oh! Let me move that. Intern's always getting in the way.
To mount the pedal assembly to the frame, we welded a piece of 1/4 inch thick, 6-inch angle iron to the frame with the Tilton bolt pattern transferred to the angle iron. To begin the plumbing, we thread one end of our 4AN stainless steel braided hose onto the brake fluid reservoirs. Then thread the other end of the 4AN hose to the inlet port of the Tilton master cylinders. Now you would attach the plumbing going to your front or rear brakes. For our installation, we are also going to have a front and rear hydraulic handbrake. This 3AN braided hose will go between the Tilton masters and the handbrake inlet. The handbrake outlets will then go to our brakes. Our Tilton pedal assembly and all the plumbing for our brake system is into our 1930 all-wheel drive Model A. You may have noticed while we were putting everything together, we never tightened anything up. That's because this is all mock-up right now. Once this brake system is in and a couple other projects are done, we're going to go ahead and tear everything apart, paint, powder coat, and rebuild the engine, and a bunch of other fun stuff that you will see here on GarageGuruTV. We did not install the throttle cable because we don't have our final throttle body yet, but I'll make sure to show that when we install that. If you want to see what Tilton products will fit on your vehicle, check out TiltonRacing.com. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at GarageGuruTV to keep up with all the projects in between the episodes. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next time.
Well, there's another one in the can. I don't know which can it is, but it's in the can. I'll see you next time, Garage Guru TV. Hey, by the way, you single tortoises out there, my name's Pete. I'm single and ready to mingle. There's a junk everywhere. Don't clean your bones. I'm gonna tell you my age.